Number 9. Janepsy Mesa Carballo. Florida resident Janepsy Mesa Carballo was accused of revenge killing her late husband's business partner, Ilan Nissim. The 37-year-old claimed that she was acting in self-defense when she fatally shot Nissim in 2008, just a month after her husband's murder. However, her attorney's attempt to use the stand your ground law in her defense was denied by the case's presiding judge. Nissim and Orlando Mesa, Carballo's husband, had allegedly been involved in illicit activities together. Mesa Carballo suspected Nissim of being behind her husband's murder, but before any arrest could be made, she made a 911 call claiming that the man had entered her home and begun acting threateningly, prompting her to fire the fatal rounds. Detectives suspected that Nissim had been lured into a trap, but initially had no evidence to arrest Mesa Carballo. That changed when an informant working on the case recorded the suspect admitting that she was worried the police wouldn't be able to catch Nissim and she wanted an eye for an eye, for his daughter to grow up without a father, just like my son. In November of 2014, Mesa Carballo was sentenced to life in prison for the killing, a decision she attempted to appeal, but the ruling was officially upheld on May the 10th of 2017. Number 8. Chris Smith. On December the 7th of 2018, 8 years after murdering his business partner, Chris Smith, California man Edward Shin was convicted on a charge of murder for financial gain. Although the victim had last been seen on June the 4th of 2010, family members continued to receive emails from him for several months thereafter. In his messages, Smith claimed to have sold all of his shares of the business to his partner in order to travel the world with a Playboy model. 41-year-old Shin had been suspected of previous crimes, including staging his own kidnapping to scam his parents out of $1 million. He was eventually brought to trial by one of his victims, Joseph Gray, in order to pay $700,000 in restitution. Smith, who co-owned the 800 Exchange, a debt consolidation company with Shin, was worried that his partner might steal from the business, voicing his concerns to his lawyer in an email that read, "We need to make sure he doesn't have room for fraud." Soon after, Smith's attitude abruptly shifted, and he explained to his attorney, via email, that Shin would buy out his shares to afford him the opportunity to purchase a 40-foot yacht and travel the world. The emails came to a sudden halt on December the 26th of 2010, prompting Smith's family and friends to contact the authorities. An investigation was launched, and although Shin initially denied any involvement in his partner's disappearance, he eventually admitted that Smith had accidentally hit his head on the corner of a desk during an altercation between them, resulting in his death. The man claimed to have cleaned up the scene in the accident's aftermath, but refused to inform detectives of the body's whereabouts, and Smith's remains were never recovered. The jury rejected Shin's version of the fatal events and ultimately convicted him after 6 hours of deliberation. Number 7. Elizabeth Zhong. In 2013, Auckland, New Zealand residents Elizabeth Zhong and Fang Sun partnered up to form Sunbow Limited, an investment firm that specialized in the respective film and vineyard industries. Their partnership was described by Zhong's daughter as one of trust, until conflict arose between the 55-year-old majority owner and 48-year-old Sun in 2019. From April to June of that year, the business partners were involved in a bitter legal dispute, with Sun claiming Zhong had misappropriated more than $26 million from the company. This led to Sunbow Limited going bankrupt and having to be sold in order to repay its insurmountable debts. On November the 27th of 2020, Zhong's lifeless body was found stuffed into a suitcase in the back of her Land Rover with over 20 stab wounds. During the weeks leading up to her murder, the victim had told several people that she'd begun to fear for her life, and Sun immediately became the homicide investigation's prime suspect. On June the 2nd of 2022, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Number 6. Michael Modesty. On May the 23rd of 2016, Australian law enforcement closed a missing persons case following a 15-day investigation. It was officially determined that 33-year-old Michael Modesty had been murdered by a contact he'd made while dabbling with illicit substances. Modesty, a businessman from Adelaide, had last been seen on May the 8th after returning home from a business trip to Bangkok, where he had allegedly purchased silicone. Investigators discovered his car, which had been abandoned near his home, while his phone and wallet remained in his apartment. Police officers detected no signs that a break-in had occurred, implying that the perpetrator had been known to the victim. Although Modesty had a previous arrest related to illegal substances 2 years prior to his disappearance, the police reportedly noted that there was no sign of sophisticated trafficking on his part. The strangeness of his disappearance, however, as well as the recent trip to the Philippines, led authorities to believe that the victim had in fact been involved with traffickers and had been murdered due to a business disagreement. As of the latest developments, no suspects had been identified in Modesty's murder. Number 5. Robert Krahn. Arizona man Robert Krahn's murder remained a mystery for almost 20 years after his initial disappearance from the Phoenix store he co-owned on February the 3rd of 1996. The victim's wife, Pat, had initially been suspicious of her husband's business partner, Dean Babbitt, but the latter denied any involvement in the crime. In 2014, however, cold case detectives reopened the case, utilizing technology that hadn't been available during the original investigation. It was subsequently determined that after Krahn and Babbitt's store had gone out of business, the pair were cleaning the building when the former was fatally shot in the back office, while his partner was allegedly working in the front. Babbitt, who was 69 at the time of the investigation's reopening, was suspected of carrying out the shooting himself and lying about his position within the store during initial questioning. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Detective Clark Schwarzkopf, who was involved with the investigation from the very beginning, indicated that he hoped the trial would bring long-awaited closure to the victim's family. Number 4. Ahmad Slyyeh. Louisiana businessman Ahmad Slyyeh was arrested on February the 2nd of 2022 for attempting to hire a hitman to murder his business partner. The men had purchased a gas station together on the outskirts of Slidell, a town located roughly 30 minutes from New Orleans. 30-year-old Slyyeh arranged a meeting with the would-be killer at his business. After discussing the details of the planned assassination, the prospective hitman contacted the authorities and informed them of his conversation with Slyyeh. Neither the identity of the business partner nor the police informant were released to the public in the immediate aftermath. A warrant was issued for Slyer's arrest and he voluntarily turned himself in shortly thereafter. His bond was set at $225,000 while detectives continued their investigation. Number 3. Edward Gregory. In December of 1999, Norman Schlunt and his wife Angela Soon Hee Kim murdered their business partner, 62-year-old Edward Gregory, by grounding up sleeping pills into his chili and placing a plastic bag over his head. The Phoenix, Arizona couple cleaned up the evidence of the crime before contacting the police, and Gregory was initially believed to have passed of natural causes. That assumption was challenged in 2006 when Hee Kim openly admitted to the crime to a friend, who in turn contacted the authorities. Gregory and Schlunt had taken out a life insurance policy together before the murder, naming each other as the beneficiaries. By the time the perpetrators were arrested, they had already spent most of the insurance money they had been awarded in the wake of their partner's death. Schlunt was sentenced to life in prison and also ordered to pay restitution to the victim's daughters, Trena Landers and Chrisana Clark. In 2014, Schlunt's bank accounts were emptied to uphold the court's ruling, prompting him to argue that his rights had been violated. The DA rejected the petition, claiming that the right to prompt restitution overrules the prisoner's property exemption. Today's topic was requested by Dano83, Ghost in the Darkness, and Jamone Thompson. In addition to this, it was also requested by Instagram follower Brides Photography. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Shane and Sabrina Santa Cruz. Shane Santa Cruz was arrested on September the 9th of 2022 for stealing over $25,000 from the business he and his spouse shared with a third partner. The Parkland, Florida resident described himself online as the Chief Executive Officer of Better Addiction Care and founder of KO Addiction, two organizations dedicated to helping people with mental health and substance abuse issues. Santa Cruz, along with his 33-year-old wife, Sabrina, allegedly used unlawfully obtained money to make more than 400 Amazon purchases, as well as pay for their phone bills between 2017 and 2018. When Santa Cruz was confronted by the couple's business partner, whose identity wasn't disclosed to the media, he vehemently denied the accusations of fraud, prompting the partner to contact the authorities. A warrant was subsequently issued for Santa Cruz's arrest, and he was apprehended without incident. Sabrina turned herself in the following day, whereupon she was charged with grand theft in the second degree. Both husband and wife were released on a $3,500 bond pending the continuation of their cases' legal proceedings. Number 1. Ross Byrne. On April the 8th of 2022, 58-year-old Ross Byrne was sentenced to 20 years in prison after confessing that he'd plotted to murder his business partner, among several other crimes. Jerry Moore, Byrne's former roommate and co-owner of the best dang bakery around in Woodstock, Georgia, was found stabbed to death in January of 2014. The ensuing autopsy uncovered the presence of more than 32 stab wounds on the victim's body. Homicide detectives began to look into people who would benefit from Moore's demise, noting that his bakery had been struggling financially. Evidence recovered during the investigation revealed that Jonathan Wheeler, one of the bakery's employees, had been hired by Byrne to murder his business partner. Wheeler, who was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, implicated Byrne as the intellectual author of the murder plot and told detectives that his boss had helped clean up the victim's blood from the crime scene. The accusations were strengthened by the fact that Byrne had become the sole owner of the bakery after his partner's death, providing a potential financial motive for the killing as well. After obtaining a search warrant for the suspect's home, officers discovered several of the victim's possessions inside. Byrne was ultimately found guilty of criminal solicitation, as well as conspiracy to conceal the death of another, hindering the apprehension of another, and violations of the RICO Act. Thanks for watching. What is the highest valued item you have ever stolen in your life? Let us know in the comments section below.